right, welcome everybody to another episode of MTGFAM, Magic the Gathering, Family and Magic. We want to officially welcome you to the family. Again, the purpose of this podcast is we want to speak directly to the parents who are both MTG players and also just looking for that camaraderie and just looking for some advice as far as being a parent and also how to incorporate and balance Magic the Gathering and family time. I am one of your hosts, Said, or you can find me on Twitter as Said_Senpai. I'll let our co-hosts go ahead and introduce themselves. How about you take it away, Kyle?
So I'm Kyle Carson. You can find me on Twitter at Kyle C. Carson because I use my real name on Twitter, like a smart person like that.
Can't miss them.
And I am Mason. Obviously, most of y'all know by now, all I do is EDH, and I'm here to go through that 100 and talk to you like your family.
Awesome. So we have a very interesting topic that we want to give to the people today. And the topic of this episode is new additions. Not the music group New Edition, new additions, ADD. So speaking specifically to adding new cards to our EDH decks or to your whatever format you guys out there play, I just focus on EDH because that's all I do as well.
That's all exists.
I play other formats.
Get out of here, Kyle. We aren't asking you.
You can chime in at the end. But also, not just new additions to your MTG decks, but also new additions to your family, to your household, how life changes when you become a parent, and still be able to balance that Magic the Gathering time. So those are our two main topics for the day. But first, let's jump into our first segment, which is adding new cards to our decks. So we had a discussion offline, and we really had a burning question that we just wanted to try to figure out, how we all differ in this aspect. Pre-ordering versus waiting for your cards. What is our strategy when it comes to getting new cards and building the decks? So essentially what we're about to discuss is, do we wait for that new card to hit our mailbox and then we start making our cuts? Or do we just go ahead and pre-order a card and already decide what that cut is going to be? Kyle, how about you? You brought this topic to us, so how about you start us off?
Sure. So this is something I've gotten burned by so many times in the past. Like I see some cards, I get really excited about a new set that's coming out, and I make a couple of pre-orders, and then the cards get to me, and I start looking through my decks, and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know what to cut. And I don't even know if there's a card that's worse than what I'm already playing. And it's a real bummer and a real financial drain sometimes. And that's not even getting to the point of which I'm hoping we'll get to a little bit later when you're talking about do you pre-order a card or do you wait for the price to drop several weeks after the set comes out? But I have a lot of fun with it. Nowadays, I've been really good about the fact if I want to add a card, I make a list of all the cards I want. I make a list of all the decks they're going to go into, and then I start combing through that deck to find cuts. And I run my cuts by other people, say in a group deck building exercise, and say hey, I'm planning on cutting X for Y. How does that sound? And once I get that feedback, I'll actually make the pre-order.
That makes a lot of sense. So I come from a little bit more of a financial background, and that's just because of the people that I hang out with when we're not cooped up and everything. I've been taught a lot of different techniques, a lot of prediction stuff to help try to make Magic pay for itself. But I will have to say that this is the first time I have pre-ordered a commander, but just for the sheer sake of, oh my god, I want to frickin' play this. That doesn't happen to me normally. Normally I'll have an idea of what I want to do, or hey, that could go into this deck like Kyle, and then when I get it, I'm like, all right, so what am I going to cut? I'm so used to everything here. does everything sit here? How do I do this? So on and so forth. Um, but I definitely, with the new set coming out, I went with Kelsey N, which I've obviously been talking to you all about, and I pre-ordered. I mean, I probably overpaid by like $3 or $4. But I'm really just not that worried about that $3 or $4. I know that I'm gonna get the card I want in a really quick manner, and I can get the deck together and get rolling. So it very much is that. Uh, do I mind waiting and saving a little bit more money, or do I just want to let full on deck building take me over and be like, boom, let's freaking do this?
Yeah, if it's a commander, I'm definitely more interested in pre-ordering the commander because like I've got the deck built at home, ready and waiting. I've got two from these new sets that are coming out that are set and waiting for just like the new commander cards, and they're built, they're ready. I understand that I probably overpaid for the commanders, and that's okay. Like it's fine. I'm getting fun value out of them, and I'm getting that fun value started sooner.
100%. That's 100% the page I'm on. Um, like you all, I've shown you all the pictures. I have just a line of deck boxes on the edge of my desk that just have my multiple decks that are in progress. So, and I have them like prioritized from left to right. And if whenever I get new cards in, especially if I pre-order them, I will like set them in front of that deck box and be like, all right, well now I got to make a change. What am I going to do here? And I'll just sit there and like agonize over it. And then I ask you all, and you all like, oh, well that makes a whole lot of sense. I'm just going to freaking do that. What about you, Sid? What are you thinking?
All right. I take a very mad scientist approach to getting my cards. I'm somewhere in the middle of both of you guys as far as looking at making a list and, trying to figure out the fun value and everything. And also just being very budget conscious. So I work on the extremes on both ends of that. So I, first of all, create a budget for myself each month. I'm sure that all families have to do this, maybe some more than others.
Absolutely.
Um, a- and basically, I go from there. I set my budget. I'll just give a round number here, about 30 to $35, just to be generous. Um, and I'll look for the most expensive cards that I've created in my list. Again, mad scientist. I have several lists sitting in different places. I have an Amazon list. I have a Card Kingdom list. I have a TCG player list, just to keep track of long running cards and where their prices stand, just to see where I can get my best value from. Um, Cards that I have seen just kind of sitting out there for a while, I monitor those prices. When I feel like the time is right, I go ahead and jump on it. And so my process is more so uh, buying cards that I've been itching or kind of waiting to play for like maybe about 3 or 4 months, and I'm patient with it, and I just acquire them when I can, and then I start to build those decks around those cards. Every now and then, I may have a deck that's already built, and I go ahead and find a card that I absolutely know that I need for that deck, and I include that in the order. I don't do small orders. I do mid to large orders. Try to get everything at one time, and that's pretty much about it.
I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense, honestly. Um, like I said, I've been taught a lot of really cool things. I've told you all how I pick bulk and turn nickels and dimes. Like I turn you like 30,000 nickels and dimes into like Card Kingdom credit, and that pays for my decks. So whereas you're more of a budgeter, I'm more of I'm putting in 2 or 3 hours a night when I have bulk to save up this money so I don't have to spend any of my own money out of my work paycheck, so on and so forth.
See, I'm more like said where I've got a pretty hard budget every month that goes to my personal expenses, whether that be like I want to get a snack right at the game store or something like that at the LGS, or if I want to buy cards, it all comes out of the same fund. But when a new set comes out, that's when I'm most interested in picking up new cards, and it's primarily for the new decks I want to build. And those are the cards that like I'm almost guaranteed to add. So if they're a new commander that's going in and the price isn't ridiculous, I'm just going to jump on it because I'd rather get the fun value out of the card and get the fun value started than I would like wait for everything. Now, if I'm missing a bunch of pieces out of the deck, pieces will wait. I'm not going to go through and buy a bunch of stuff for the deck because if the commander comes there, I play the deck, and it turns out I don't like it. I don't want to be that far in the hole.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
I mean, no, go ahead, Sid.
Oh, I was just going to say that's pretty much on the same fence where I sit as well. You you gotta try to balance out that fun and that excitement, and also what makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, if it's just a card that you know that you're absolutely going to play, that you're excited to get your hands on, go ahead and splurge on it if you feel like you can swing it. But if not, if you feel like you can wait, then I say go ahead and wait.
absolutely.
Kyle brought up a really super good point there, though, about getting something and being like, well, I really don't like this. And you really, like, especially with new sets like this, we got to worry about how the cards that we're getting are going to change how our decks run, what they do, so on and so forth. Like, how do you all deal with just when that happens? Like, you get to a point where you put these new cards in, you're like, wow, what happened to this? This is not the same deck that I originally brewed.
So I've had that happen two ways, where I've put in like new cards for a deck, and it's changed the way the deck swung, and I've just been like, ooh, I don't like how this card plays. I don't think it makes for fun game states. And then I'll either pull the pieces out or I'll deconstruct the deck entirely, depending on if I think it's salvageable or not. Um, this actually happened to my longest running deck. I had Lorthos together for almost 7 years, playing the same deck, and it was like I had some of it foiled. I had like pieces from different parts, and I could look at cards and know when in time I got them because they meant something to me. But the
Could
decks,
you explain Lorthos real quick for the
oh
people?
sure. So he's a mono blue octopus from Zendikar. 5 and 3 blue for an 8/8 octopus that when you attack, you can pay 8 mana, target 8 things, and frost tap those 8 things. And it started as like a big blue sea monster deck that slowly turned into a big blue mana deck, and then by the time I realized it had turned into a big blue control deck, and it just was miserable for people to play against. And I ended up just scrapping the whole deck because it just wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah, I feel like that can definitely lend to maybe a future conversation about. I've heard about power creep. I've been learning more about that word more and more as we play. And as you start to add new cards, maybe those new cards are just way more powerful than your old cards. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I mean, not even power creep, but even like, let's say a new ramp spell comes out, and you're like, man, I really like this new ramp spell with cycling because cycling's in Ikoria. So you're like, okay, I want to add this new ramp spell, but I don't feel like cutting any of my other ramp spells. I'll just add another one. Well, then it turns out like you just changed the dynamics of how your deck plays out now. And if you're not careful, it will change the entire course of how you pilot the deck.
Normally, when it comes to me, like, I obviously have a little bit more of a disposable income, so I don't make a whole lot of changes to decks unless they've really stuck with me. They've really resonated with me real well. But I did see my original deck, Baborgmos Enraged, obviously, go from a much more landfall oriented list to what it is now, like almost all in focused on putting lands into my hand and destroying people with lightning bolts. Um, and it was the same type of situation. I watched those pieces come from different sets. Oh, like hey, that would be good. That would be good. And it was a really slow change for me. I don't know how yours progressed at what speed or anything, but the deck is still pretty much the original idea with just a much more focus on using Baborgmos' ability. So it's definitely changed over time, but it may not have changed as much as, like, say, that you saw, especially in the time frame that you're talking about.
And that's possible. I mean, it's also like I've added cards to a deck and realized that like now I've got a 3 or 4 card combo, and I'm like, okay, do I want this combo finish, and do I want this combo finish more than once? And sometimes you can kind of run the combo finish. And you're like, okay, cool, I did the thing. All right, I'm going to pull the thing out of the deck and move on. What you got, Seth?
Yeah, so I actually don't have much to say about changing the dynamics of the deck, only because you guys know me and I can't keep a deck together for more than 2 or 3 months.
I mean, if you have a deck together for more than one game session, I think it's a big deal for you.
Yeah, I'll be sitting there sleeving up another deck while we're playing a game.
Seen it happen.
Yeah, I don't get as too attached to my decks, and I don't analyze them as long as you guys. That's something I'm going to try to work on. Try to find more enjoyment in the decks that I play, and be more conscientious about that. And just find those cards that when they get in, I can actually say I definitely want to see this deck stick around for more than. I can see myself playing this over and over again. I won't get tired of it. And so that's where I'm trying to grow as a Magic player myself.
That's definitely a very noble thing, definitely. Because being able to take this information that we're sharing with between ourselves and also with our listeners, and being able to adapt that to our own style and really grow as a people, super solid. Like, it just makes everybody better at what they do, and that makes me super happy.
Now, Mason, you're more familiar with a lot of the digital tools than at least I am. Do you use any of them to, I guess, guess or playtest what's effective in your decks before you order cards?
So I've never really used any of the online play tools other than Cockatrice, which we went over in the original one. But that was back when I really first started getting into EDH. Um, it's really nice to be able to test with some of those cards ahead of time, but sometimes you have to manually input them because you're wanting to use them well ahead of time. Honestly, when it comes to digital, especially me when my building, my way of doing it is what I call organized. So obviously we use Architect right now. That's what the majority of us, I believe, are primarily using now, within our group here, obviously. And it's like the new hotness, obviously. But my original start out was on tappedout.net. Yet another one that we talked about just for online storage space for decks. I would always brew with other friends on there. I'd share links the same way I do now. We'd go across, come up with lists. We'd brew with eyes, just getting really good ideas down. And when I really got happy with a list, I would immediately take that list and copy it and make a duplicate list under my account. And then I would name that duplicate list the same name as the original, but add the word needed to it. So as I would order my cards and get all the cards together, get them all sleeved up, I could easily just pull up that list and take cards away from the list saying, hey, you have this and this is still what you need to get for the deck. And that's what has been the most effective use of those kind of tools for me personally. Right now I said Architect is the current one that I continue to use. Tapped Out was the one I originally used, and I played around with deck stats, which I know CMDR Central is a big fan of, and because it gives you an insane amount of data about your deck and everything, but the UI for me just does not do it. How are you all feeling with the online deck storage tools?
I do a lot of what you do, Mason, where I'll build a deck. I won't go as far as building the need list. I've got a pretty good idea of what I have in my collection since it's small enough, relatively. But then I'll run it by people in my play group and say hey, and not even for feedback, but just does this look fun to play against? Because if they're the people I'm going to see most frequently, I want to think pick your favorite deck in your head, play it against this new list. Would this game sound fun to you, or does it sound like I'm just going to run you over, or you're going to run me over, or this is just a much worse version of another deck?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and when using these tools, Architect or tappedout.net, the main thing that I'm focusing on is the info the kind of the infographics that they're giving you on the side. So your curve, how many of a certain number of spells are you running, what color is the most heaviest in your deck. So that's what I'm using to not only improve myself, but also make sure you guys pay attention to as well. So are you satisfied that you're running 13 7 higher cards? Is that the game plan? If not, we need to bring that curve down. Yeah.
I mean, I play
And
some decks
so
where that's kind of normal.
yeah, well, you're the big stumpy guy.
Yeah.
Like I think you would really benefit said from deck stats. It gives you all the data you see on the other sites and even more. Like it really goes in depth into your breakdown of spells, types, so on and so forth.
Gotcha. So how about we jump topics just slightly, just as a quick summation, a quick wrap up to this segment. We talked about adding new cards to our decks and the excitement level versus patience when it comes to, do we order the card first? Do we make the cuts first? What happens when the card gets into our mailbox and gets into our hands? Where did this card come from? Oh my God, what did I do? We have those kind of situations. So, but at the end of the day, our organization is pretty much what helps us get through this. Whether that be making a list, asking your play group or your friends, does it make sense to cut this card for this card? Being budget conscious as far as pricing out different options, or just waiting, sitting on a card, trying to figure out if it's going to go up, if it's going to go down, or does it just make sense to go ahead and pre-order it before the price moves it even anymore? And also maybe just that fun value. I know I'm going to play this card, so I might as well go ahead and order it now. And we've also kind of went over some organizing tools, Architect, tappedout.net, and also deck stats. So just some tools for everybody out there to keep in handy when it comes to making new additions. Now, for our second segment, we also want to talk about new additions in the family, whether it be a new child, maybe even a new pet. I don't know. How does your life change when a new addition, new person, new family member comes into the household, and you've been an established Magic the Gathering player? How does that change life? Um, Mason, I know it's been a few years, but what was life like for you after your son came into your life?
So it was definitely the aspect that everybody says things get hectic. You have to learn how to balance your own wants and needs, your spouse's wants and needs, and this crying little ball of flesh that you're just like, wait, what am I doing? I'm like, what? How? What? And it was definitely it took time. It really did, especially as a Magic player, having all this extra time to be able to play and mess with cards and work and brew on decks, and then going to having these eyes looking at you like, I need you to change me, or yeah, you don't want to look at what I left in the diaper. And I mean, in all brevity, it's an amazing thing, just to know that little person has caused this much change in your life and brought about such a change in yourself. Uh, but back to it, like it's definitely taken a lot of time to learn how to properly balance my family time and my hobby time and just me and like emotional time to like decompress after work or after a stressful day and stuff like that. But I think especially with my support groups out there, like you guys I talk to on a daily basis, um, I know that we all talk to each other if we're having issues, and that something like that really helps, being able to say, yeah, this is what I'm doing to be able to handle my stuff, and I'm here to help you handle yours if things get too much for you.
Yeah, definitely. Um, just with my daughter being born recently, this has actually been a strange, I won't even really say strange time for me. It's just been interesting, only in the sense because when both my children were born, like a few weeks right up until the due date. I told the people at the LGS, all right, guys, I'm taking off. You'll see me when you see me. I got a kid that's about to be born anytime now. So that's just time that I know that I needed to, get the house together, be there, be supportive for my wife. And, I kind of just put Magic on the back burner. That was just a sacrifice I had to make for the next however long it's going to take me to get back into it. So, of course, 6 months has gone by now. And being at the time that we're in now, I mean, not many people are playing Magic. So I haven't had a paper physical game in a very long time. Um, just with my daughter being born and also with the, coronavirus and everything hitting. So I'm kind of a little removed from the game, but at the same time, I've been, keeping my mind wrapped around building decks and ordering cards and, getting decks together for when we are able to get back out and, hit your LGS and meet up with your play groups. So for me, it's always just been about putting it on the back burner and just talking to you guys when I get a chance to, and just, uh, you know, getting my mind together to get back into the space to play Magic. And that's kind of where I've been, really with both of my children being born. Kyle, anything to chime in here?
Yeah, I've got. Sorry, guys, you're gonna have to let me step on my soapbox for a little bit because this is something with two kids and also being a foster parent. I got a lot to say on. It's been very hard for me over the years. I used to be a much more selfish person, and I wanted to make sure my own needs got met. And as I've become a father, I've really pushed a lot of that aside, and I've grown through that and trying to make sure that my kids' needs and my wife's needs get met first. And then if I have time to play, great. What that often means in reality nowadays is, or before pre-corona and hopefully post-corona, that I would get to play for a couple hours on either a Saturday or Sunday every week, every other week, depending on what we had going on the weekend. Now that meant if I wanted to build a deck, I either had to stay up late and deal with those repercussions, or I had to skip going to the store to play, which often meant that I spent more time just making little adjustments to my decks instead of complete overhauls, just because that's the time I had available. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't trade any of it. I think I've got a very good setup right in my life right now. But when it comes to the uh, being a foster parent, I also sit down with my kids and be like, once we make sure all the adults in the house are on the same page, we sit down with the kids and like, do you want and are you okay with bringing other brothers and sisters into the home? Because this is going to change the dynamic. It's going to change the amount of time I have for you. I talked last week on how, or last episode on how I taught my son how to play Magic, and I can't always play with him because I'm often holding one of his other sisters. And that's something he needed to understand before we got into this, that I'm not going to have as much time for you. Same thing with my daughter. And it's been really cool seeing that in them and how supportive they are with making new additions to our home, as well as making new additions to my home in general back when I had kids the first time and the second time. I'm off my soapbox now.
Like, you have more experience than both of us when it comes to dealing with, I feel personally. So it's really inspirational to be able to listen to you in general and hear that how you've handled everything that you've dealt with. And even like for the new fathers out there that may be listening to the cast, like, Kyle makes a lot of sense about how he does things, and he's always put off the good sense of having that good balance that you need to have with your family and everything. And that is a huge thing, because you definitely don't want to neglect your family, but at the same time you have to handle your own wants and needs and make sure that everything is in harmony, so to speak.
Yeah, it's actually been really hard for me over the years to make sure I've kind of swung so far the other direction that I've largely ignored my own needs, and I feel guilty even leaving the house. And if it wasn't for my amazing wife, I probably wouldn't play as much Magic as I do.
Basically, what I'm hearing is that you kind of have to be able to make the sacrifice when changes come into the household. At the end of the day, Magic the Gathering is just a game, but family is going to be there forever. So for us, it's always going to be a hobby. It's Magic is always going to be there. So no matter how much time we take away from it, when we come back to it, the game is still going to be there. And that's how I looked at it, and I didn't feel bad about stepping away from the game shop, or not seeing the guys every other week or whatever. Like, family comes first, and the game store will still be here, the game will still be here, and it'll probably be a new set in rotation by the time you see me again. So I'll have something new for you.
I mean, I actually transitioned from, I used to have like 15 decks on me at any given time. And up until just recently, I had 2, because those were the amount of decks I knew I could sit down, I could play them regularly, and I knew what changes I wanted to make before the next set came out, so I didn't buy some crazy new additions that didn't fit in the deck at all.
So we come to the hardest part of our show, trying to transition from the parenting talk back into the game talk. Maybe it might be easier than I think it is, but we always have a question of the day before we end the show, posed to our host, myself included. But essentially, what are some good token makers that you love to play? Like, if you're playing a deck, I want this token maker in this deck. Kyle, you go first.
All right. So first off, I'm not going to talk about my favorite one. I'm going to talk about my second favorite. My favorite one is Gyrus. We talked about the Waker of Corpses a little bit last week. He's my favorite commander. We'll just move past him, and we'll go to my second favorite in Felden of the Third Path. For 1 in red, you get a 2/3 Human Artificer with an ability for 2 in a red, tap him, make an artifact token creature of something in your yard, and sacrifice it at end of turn, or beginning of the next end step. Gets haste, cool. I love this token maker. I love the lore behind the token maker is one thing, but also just the card itself. You get so much janky value from just like, I'm gonna reanimate this. And like, what's in your yard now? Like, grab a Muldrifter. Sure, I'll draw 2 cards and attack you for 2. Grab a Shriek Maw. I'll kill your thing. Grab a Combustible Gear Hulk. Grab a Wood Elves. I don't care. There's always something for Felden to get.
Yeah, I remember actually playing against a Felden deck one Gen Con ago. Some of my most memorable games are at Gen Con. But yeah, he definitely kicked our butt with Felden. I was embarrassed to lose by a mono red deck. I'm just playing.
Dracuseth hears this.
Dracuseth has yet to win a game against me.
Yeah, whatever.
One day I know it'll get there. But I'll go next. This took me a while to kind of figure out, but my favorite token maker is Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. I just love this card when it came out in the Amonkhet set. First of all, it's a 2-drop, and it makes little snake babies. Like, you weaken other creatures by putting negative -1/-1 counters on creatures, and for every time you do that, you make a 1/1 green snake with Death Touch. Now, the Death Touch is the kicker there. A lot of people forget about that, but it's just a way to weaken your opponent's boards and always just find more and creative ways to make little snakes, and it gets out of hand very quickly. That's just been my experience playing Hapatra.
Hapatra is a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, there's so many fun commander applications for Hapatra. Hapatra decks, when someone sits down and flips Hapatra, I know I'm in for a good time at the table.
Speaking, like, going from there, I'll go ahead and take over. And I love tokens in general. I love token decks. I've played, God, I don't even remember how many different commanders that were token lists. And I still, like, almost constantly feel drawn to token lists, but I got to realize I have to branch out every now and then. And almost always my token lists have white in them, because white just generates so much value in tokens. And no matter what, if it's a token list and I've got white, I'm going to be playing Twilight Drover. We're looking at an original printing in Ravnica of 1 and 2 generic for a 1/1 creature spirit that reads, whenever a creature token leaves play, put a +1/+1 counter on Twilight Drover. and then you can pay 2 and a white to remove a +1/+1 counter from Twilight Drover and put a 1/1. I'm sorry, put 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying into play. To me, it just kind of upgrades some little janky 1/1 tokens into 1/1 flyers really easily. And it's super easy to abuse. Plus, I mean, who else goes around looking at the dude on this art on the card? Yeah, I'm just walking around. I'm getting bigger, and then you know what? I'm not here. Get out of here. You go fight. You go fight over there. I'll just make a spirit. Go on. Here's another spirit. Get out of here.
I actually had a game with Sed a couple months ago before the whole coronavirus hit, where I stole someone's Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. And he was with Twilight Drover, able to just shrug off the Annihilator 4 and block the Ulamog every turn, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was incredibly frustrating.
And for every time a spirit token dies, he just gets bigger.
It's amazing. It's just straight utility on a body, and it's amazing that way.
Definitely. So to the listeners, let us know what your favorite token makers are out there, or wherever we host this thing at, if you're able to do that. Also, if we have some type of chat or Discord or something available, also let us know about your experience in life, changing situations with making new additions to your decks or also to your families. And from there, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. I want to thank our hosts, Mason and Kyle, for joining me this evening. This has been a fun discussion, fun talk. Glad we were able to talk about this. Again, my name is Sed_Senpai on Twitter. You can find Kyle at Kyle C. Carson. And you can find Mason at All I Do Is EDH. And again, together we make up the EDHDADs.
See ya.